Hi, good morning, everybody. We're really excited to have you here with us today. We'd like to welcome you to our Farm to Stream virtual field trip. I'd like to introduce myself really quickly. I'm Heather Bryan, and I'm an educator for Ohio Corn and Wheat for their Feed the World program. So we're excited to have you with us today. Before we get started, I want to make sure that we share some housekeeping notes so that you'll know how to interact with us today. If you're joining us on Zoom, you'll note that the chat is turned off today. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen to ask us some questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can. If you're watching on Facebook, feel free to drop questions into the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, please note that the live chat is turned off. If you'd like to interact and ask questions, please go back to your confirmation or reminder email and click to join us via the Zoom link. Otherwise, you can sit back and enjoy the trip. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors for today's program, Ohio Corn and Wheat, Bowsher Farms, and Feed the World. In the chat, I will go ahead and put the links to Ohio Corn and Wheat and Feed the World, where you can find this live virtual field trip and other ones that we've done to help bring agriculture into focus. So as we get started, I just want to give a quick introduction of Ohio Corn and Wheat so you can understand what Ohio Corn and Wheat is and how they're helping us learn more about the science of agriculture in our classrooms today. So Ohio Corn and Wheat is a strategic alliance that works on behalf of Ohio's corn and small grain farmers to secure a sustainable future while also developing and expanding markets, funding research, and providing education about corn and small grains. So we're excited for them to be here with us today. As we're moving forward, I want to really quick point out that we are so excited to be on Bowsher Farms. So we're going to go ahead and meet our two farmers that are with us today, Ben and Stephanie. So hi, Ben. Hi, Stephanie. How are you? Really quickly, Stephanie and Ben Bowsher grow corn, soybean, and wheat on their family farm in Allen County. Ben is a fourth generation farmer, continuing the legacy from his parents, Pam and Greg, who also assist on the family farm today. Stephanie is a board member for Ohio Corn and Wheat and represents the wheat industry nationally as a member of the Wheat Foods Council. So together, Ben and Stephanie have interests in livestock, alternative uses, and farmer education. Ben and Stephanie's biggest accomplishment, of course, is instilling in their three children the respect all aspects of agriculture and food production. So hi, Steph, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for
Awesome.
having me today.
Yes, we're so excited to have you here. One of the things that our students are always interested in, Stephanie, is what was your career pathway to become a farmer? So, what made you help decide that agriculture was the career for you?
So I grew up on a dairy farm about an hour from where we're currently located. And so it was a multi-generation dairy farm.
Mhm.
And included in that, we grew all of our feed ingredients. So corn, hay, um, wheat. And then from that time frame, I always knew I wanted to go to college. And agriculture was just kind of always in deep seated within me, I guess.
Mhm.
And so went to college, which happens to be where I met Ben. And we ultimately dated and got married.
Mhm.
Career wise, for me, then out of college, I was hired as a sales agronomist with a local co op and worked for them for about 9 or 10 years. And then Ben and I had the opportunity to come back a little closer to farm. And so I needed something a little bit more um, flexible if we were to be able to farm a little bit more or even start a family. And so I switched to crop insurance adjusting, but really just through internships and different experiences being on different farms, uh, it's just in my blood to farm.
Oh, that sounds awesome. It's so wonderful that you have found a career that you are passionate about. And I know that both you and Ben as well are passionate about education. So we're really excited. Hi, Ben. How are you?
Good
Um,
morning.
looks like you've got that is that the combine behind you? It's hard for me to
Yes.
see right now. There you
Yes.
go. So that's a harvest tool for students that may not be familiar. So that's how you help to get the grain out of the field and into the proper place later on. So really excited to have you here today. I heard Stephanie say that she was in college and she became an agronomist as well as a crop insurance salesman and a specialty person. What was your career pathway in college?
Went to college. Mom and dad kind of pushed me to leave the farm to find something, make sure there wasn't something else I wanted to do. From little on up, I knew I wanted to farm, so I went to Wilmington as well, met Steph, and also got a degree in ag. I started out selling seed corn and did that for about 10 years. And then the opportunity came to move back closer to the family farm, and my parents were looking to move towards retirement, and we kind of stepped in and took over. Yeah.
And so now you're where you are today. You guys have the
Yes.
most beautiful farm in Harrod, Ohio. So
Thank you.
you're welcome. So thank you again for letting us join you today. One of the things as Ohio Corn and Wheat board member, Steph, I know is that you guys have a passion again for helping everyone see what you're doing on your farm. And one of the goals for Ohio Corn and Wheat is always to improve water quality within agriculture and to become more knowledgeable about our practices so that we're improving it every day on our farms. I know that you guys have recently helped them to create a sustainability video. So as we're talking through today, we're going to talk about what are some of those best management practices that farmers employ within their, farm to help improve water quality on a daily basis. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this video really quick that you helped. So for all the students that are out there, this is a video that is about farmer education. So here we go, Dan.
Most farmers have a passion for what they do. It is not a job. It is a passion to plant a seed and see it mature into a crop. We're living there. We're eating that same crop. We want to do it right and do the best we can do.
This land is important to us because it's a large investment for us. At the same time, Ben and I will only have an opportunity to have 40 or 50 planting and harvests. This is it. We don't have continual chances to try to get it right. We try to do it right every year.
Sustainability to me is doing things that are going to be good not only now in the near future, but long term. There's different levels you could look at it. You can look at it from a financial standpoint. You can look at it from how you're taking care of the environment. What we're doing here is field tiling. We're installing tile underground that helps remove excess water in the soil profile. You've got to keep your water to air ratio in balance for crops to grow correctly.
Wheat here in the United States actually grows in a lot of different climates. Here in the eastern part of the United States where we grow soft red winter, we actually have a lot of times an abundance of water.
We're able to accept the bigger rainfalls because we've got the excess water moved out, thus creating less runoff, keeping our nutrients in place, and growing better crops and more consistent crops. We need to make the land that we have the best it can be. My wife and I feel that this is one of the best ways to make this land better, make it more consistent, more sustainable for the future, use the nutrients correctly to grow the best crops we can. The farm, it is a passion, but it is also a business. When we can make money, when we can make profit, we can do things that make us more sustainable, whether it's installing field tile, updating equipment with newer technology that makes us more efficient in our time. If you take care of the land will take care of you.
I love that video, you guys. You did such a wonderful job. I think it's really important for students to understand that a farm is a business and to be able to move forward and to do those best management practices. Sometimes you have a financial input that you have to do. So, what you said there, Ben, about making sure that you're making an income so that you can continue to improve your practices on your farm, I think is really important. So thank you guys for that. As we're getting started today, I wanted you guys to see that video so that you could see an overview of their farm and to hear their passion that they have for agriculture, making sure that, you understand also that this is a farm that they're going to leave for the future generations to employ and to produce a great crop on as well. So really quickly, before we get started, we are going to focus on best management practices. And so I know that we'll talk about these throughout our time together on our farm experience, but we're going to talk a little bit about the 4 R's, and I'll let Ben explain those a little bit later on when we talk about precision agriculture. But we're also going to talk about other things like improving riparian zones, with shade and cover, using tiling to help to both move water out of the field or at times to keep water in a field as well. Employing grass water filter strips so that soil and erosion and nutrients are caught before they get into the waterways. Cover crops like wheat, for example, help to keep the soil covered and active throughout the wintertime. Bioreactors potentially, or waterment and sediment control basins. Those are all best management practices. And you on your farm, Ben, employ many of those that we'll talk about today. So let's get started, okay? Really quickly, I see that you guys, we talked a lot about tile. So before we talk a little bit about tile, I'd like Dan to go ahead and show the soil sampling picture here on our farm so you can discuss a little bit about what we see when we look at this image. So this is an aerial view of your farm, and you can see those black areas where you pulled soil samples, which we'll discuss in some detail later on. But what else are we seeing when we look at this image? Can you talk a little bit about the natural area that the water is flowing through that soil?
Yes, on the right side of the dots, you're going to see kind of a green area. That is a creek or stream that feeds down into, actually goes into the Little Miami River, which eventually ends up in the Ohio River. So that would be part of the Ohio River watershed. And then you can see in the middle of the field, there's another green patch. That is a waterway that is used to control runoff. There's some pretty good fall elevation changes in that farm, and that is to slow water down, catch sediment before it hits the creek. And then the darker areas you see in the field, those are the lower lying areas where the main tile would be, and where kind of the runoff or the excess water on top is going to feed.
Okay, great. So let's look at the image of what tile is here really quickly, just so students have an understanding of what tile is. So help explain what this tile is and why you put it down below your soil.
So we're looking at here, picture on the left, that's shows a couple rolls of field tile. That is a 4-inch corrugated tile. And that's what we use as the laterals, or think of those as your county roads or your state routes. And then in the right, we've got a picture of a main tile, that black tile. It's larger in diameter that you can note. And those would be like your interstates. So we feed the county roads, the state routes into those interstate tile, typically in the low areas of the field, and then those run into a creek, ditch, river, depending what your outlet is, and then from there into the various watersheds. We're in a unique position where we farm here. We're actually in 3 different watersheds. We've got some farms that go into the Scioto River, which goes down through Columbus and ends up in the Ohio River. We go into the Miami River, which ends up in the Ohio River. And then where we sit here at home farm where Steph and I live, we are in the Lake Erie watershed, where we feed up to Lake Erie. So kind of an interesting setup or opportunity for us.
That sounds a little complicated, actually. So you have to be really careful because your water's going in different ways, is what I hear, both north and south. When you're
Yes.
looking at that tile, if you could go ahead and showcase that clay tile again, I want the students to see that the clay tile, we really don't employ that anymore. But when we first began to tile to help remove water from the black swamp area in Ohio, we started with clay tile. And notice on that clay tile, are there holes in that clay tile? Is it about the same?
No,
Okay.
the clay tile is solid, and actually when it is laid in the ground, they leave about a penny's gap between the tile, and that's how it would drain water. So that was done in this 50s, 60s, 70s, even into the early 80s. And then we started in with the plastic tile
Okay.
that you see here.
Yeah.
And we've got different colors depending on the manufacturer. That part really doesn't change what the tile does, but there's small slits in the tile, and that helps to let the water filter through, keeping the soil intact, and then letting it flow down to the creek, river, stream.
Yeah. And as I look at that, they look like really small holes, but when I see water that's coming out of the tiles, into waterways, it looks like there's a whole bunch of water. So that must be doing an amazing job getting all of that water that goes through the soil layers to finally get to the tile and then to get out to the waterway itself. So as water is moving through that soil, it is being cleaned also as it moves through that soil, right? And then does this tile help to keep the soil in the field?
Yes. The soil itself actually does a filtering process. You will get some fine sediment in that tile, but I'm going to say 85, 90% retains in the field. And you go to an outlet tile that has been there for a couple of years where it's established, the water coming out is going to be crystal clear.
Okay, well, let's take a look at a couple of other things. I see that could you, Dan, show us slide 7 there really quick, just a little video of some of that, what we're seeing. So as you're looking down here, it looks to me like there's some big equipment that is being used to put that tile in the soil. I know we have some videos of that are coming up that we can see there. And so help explain the process of what's happening and how they're very, don't they use GPS to go ahead and put that tile in?
Yes, it is very technologically advanced. You look at the topography of the field, and they actually use a program to lay out where to put the tile to get the correct grade so they all drain to the interstates, as I referenced before, the big tile. And we typically go on 30 or 40-foot spacings between our laterals or your county roads, your state routes. And that is all mapped through a global positioning system that's on the tile plow that you see there that's installing them. It controls the depth and where we're growing, drives itself. It does have an operator in there to watch it, but
for the most part, it sounds like it is being done almost like automatically. So I think that's really interesting that we're using like an auto steer type device to make sure that we are putting it exactly where it is supposed to go. And what I heard you also say was that this is due to like the slope of the land, so the natural way that the water would move through the soils as well. From a farmer's point of view, since you have begun tiling on your farm, and I know some of that tiling was also done ahead of time before you and Steph were farming, but how has it improved your ability to grow a crop? That's my first question, so go ahead.
Well, we can get on the fields earlier. So timing is everything on the farm. Getting the rain at the right time, getting the crop planted at the right time. Tiling allows us to get on the fields earlier and have a more consistent field to work with. You don't have spots that are too dry or too wet. We get that happy medium. And even in a year like this where we're experiencing some extreme dry weather, the tile, and I think we have a video of it or pictures later on, you can see where the crop is actually taller over the tile. It's helped with that water earlier on, and then the airflow to the roots to allow them to grow, to get into moisture.
Okay. So I have a question from Springboro Middle School. And the question is, tiling looks pretty expensive. So how can farmers afford to help put such expensive technology in their fields and farm as well?
Well, tile is one of those things you pay for it whether you install it or not. For us, we have seen the financial benefit. Yes, it is an expense up front to install it, but it does pay back. Anywhere from 3 to 7 years, we'll see complete return on our investment. So by putting it in there, the payoff is there, and then it's still there working past that time frame. If you don't have it in the field, you're probably going to have lower yields. So you're not getting the same amount of crop to market.
Okay, and right now we're looking at a close-up of the tile machine putting tile in. How far down did you say the tile was being placed to make sure that as you farm, you're not interfering with the tile?
Typically, we're putting 32 inches to 36 inches of cover back up on top of the tile.
Okay. And you said it's about 30 to 40 feet apart. I know in your tile maps that you have, I know that we have an image of a kind of a hand-drawn tile map, but in that tile map, you'll see how all of that tile comes together. And I know you've got some that are more drawn to scale. This is an older tile map that we're looking at right now. But it's really important to be able to record and have this data. How does this data kind of compare when you're looking at your soil nutrient maps that we're discussing later on? I mean, can you usually see in those areas that there is a better harvest?
Typically, yes. If you overlay your yield data maps over tile maps where you have better tile or more systematic, you typically see higher yields, which means we were utilizing those nutrients better. And a lot of times we're able to cut back or use our nutrients more efficiently. And that's where our soil sampling and variable rate of application of nutrients comes into play.
Okay, so I know that we've got some soil maps that are kind of popping up, and we heard the word that you said, like precision application, nutrient maps, fertilizer, et cetera. So as we're looking at these maps, just for your reference, Ben, we're seeing like some images that show organic matter or phosphates, pH. As a farmer, when you're looking at some of these soil maps and you're thinking about your yield later on, we had seen an image where you could see where your soil samples were pulled. How do you utilize the information that comes in on these maps when you plant and as you apply nutrients throughout the summer?
Well, on the nutrient side of things, we are variable rating our nutrients according to what our soil tests are. So if we're very, very low in a nutrient in a specific spot, they can apply more in that area. And if an area is good, they can less in that area. And then we can also change our populations on the planter accordingly. You know, we get into ground that has a better nutrient load, we can raise the population, and vice versa. You know, you get into clay on a hill that doesn't have the potential, we can lower our population. So we're not putting as much expense into that, but still get the most bang for our buck.
So it sounds like you do a lot of best management practices that all kind of blend with one another. So you're using tile to be able to go ahead and get water out of your field. You can get into your field sooner because there's, you know, it's not as wet. It helps to kind of elevate the temperature a little bit of your field, but you're also using these nutrient maps and soil maps so that you know where to put the right nutrient at the right time. So I'd like for you to talk to us just a little bit about one of those best management practices that you employ on your farm that we usually call the 4 R's. And so I'm just going to say those 4 R's to you for the students to hear. The 4 R's are dealing with nutrients, and they're where you put the right source of nutrient on your crop at the right time, also only in the right place and in the right amount. Can you kind of describe that a little bit to students as we're moving forward to talk about some other things?
Yeah. So with that, like our dry fertilizer that we're using these maps for, that would be our potash, our phosphorus applications. We are only putting on what the crop is going to remove based off of yield history. And we're applying that, typically tilling it in the fall, and we're doing it on variable rate. So if an area doesn't call for it, then we don't apply it there. If an area needs it, we apply.
Well, and as a farmer, I'm sure that's really helpful to you because you're only buying what you need. So again, that's a good return on your investment. There's no reason to put a nutrient in the field if your plant doesn't require it. Is that correct?
Correct. You would just be wasting money and wasting resources at that point. And then the whole water quality issue, we're not going to apply more than what is needed by the crop, because the potential, if it were to run off the field, then we're just going to lose it. So
Okay. So what we're going to see now is some trips down some of your grass filter strips that you have employed between your fields. So Dan's going to show those for us. And can you kind of talk about the importance of what a grass filter strip does for you on your farm? So everybody, as you're kind of watching this, you're going to see them drive down between different crops in their field, going back to where the tile is let out into a creek or a waterway. That's where we're going. But helped us to understand like why you have these grass filter strips, because I'm sure that if all of this was planted to a crop, you'd probably be making more money, right?
potentially, where we have filter strips and waterways here on our home farm, there's quite an elevation change, about 26 foot in elevation change throughout points in the farm. And what this does, if we get the large rains that the soil can't take in, and we do have surface runoff, it gathers that water, actually lets the sediment settle out in the grass before the water hits the creek. So that way we're not sending nutrients down to the rivers, and this would actually be in the Lake Erie watershed. So it's a good prevention practice.
Well, it sounds like you guys really know what you're doing on your farm there when it comes to helping to improve water quality. So things that I've heard is you only put the nutrients on that are needed by the crops. You're collecting the soil before it has an opportunity to go out into the waterways, and keeping it on your farm along with the nutrients that might be attached to those soil particles. But I also heard you say that even with the tiling and other practices that you have, there might be occasion where you have some surface runoff. So as we're kind of coming up here to where our creek is and where your tile is let out into your creek on our video, help us to see, I see some rock and some other things kind of pushed up around your creek basins. What do you have that put up there for?
This is what we call a riparian buffer, or a rock chute. And when you get large rains that you can't control with the waterways or subsurface tile, this will slow it down and help to filter that sediment or any crop residue that would run off before it gets into the open creek. It slows it down. Think of it as a speed bump in a parking lot.
Oh, that's a great modeling thing. Thank you very much. What we're also looking at right now is the big black tile that you showed us a little bit earlier, kind of beside a clay or a metal tile that's coming out into your field. Why do you have two different size tiles that are coming out into your waterway there off of your fields?
That is based on the acres that are fed into those tile. So once again, back to my traffic reference. The more traffic you're trying to filter through, think about around Columbus. You've got 270 with 3-4 lanes going around Columbus because of the amount of cars. You're trying to filter around the city. Where you come out to somewhere rural, where we live, Herod, we have a 2-lane highway because we don't have as much traffic, and that's what we've got here. The black tile, that is covering larger acreage, more football fields. To give you a visual, an acre is about the size of the football field. That black tile, 150 to 200 acres, I believe, is the watershed coming into the black tile, where the smaller metal pipe probably only has 30 to 40 acres draining into it. So less area, you need less tile, or a smaller outlet to encompass it.
Okay, that's a great comparison. So thanks a lot for that. We have a question from Joe Brinks that asks about different sizes of tile for different crops. What I just heard you say is it's not really about different tile for different crops, but really different tile sizes for different acreage. Is that correct?
Yes. There's research done by different tile companies, and maybe even some of the universities, on how much on an average water capacity that tile can take. So that's why we use the 4-inch tile for our laterals, or compared to our county roads, state roads. And we use the different size main tiles that are like our interstates that collect all those county and state roads to bring it to the ditch. And it's based on more the area looking to drain versus what crop you're going to grow on that acre.
Okay, and so I think we're going to move next to talk a little bit about your riparian zones. And I know we have a couple of videos that really showcase those bump strips that you were talking about. So like those bumps in the road, but we also have some filter strips, so grass filter strips that go straight into like a forest and then into your creek. So talk about why it's important to have some of those other aspects on your farm. So, why do you have some trees on your farm instead of just all crops, for example?
Like the case here, that the terrain is very hilly back there, so there's no benefit to clearing the woods to try and farm that. It actually holds that in place. It's another step in the filtering process in these large rains. The trees that are along the creek there, they pull nutrients out of the water if they would happen to get that far. And quite honestly, it's a nice place to go back and relax.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Really quickly, so from Canton McKinley High School, here's a question for you to answer. How would some of these practices that we talked about today affect me living in the inner city? So in other words, like, why should I care about what's happening out there on your farm when I live in an urban environment?
Anybody in Northwest Ohio that is around the Toledo area has probably heard of the algae blooms on Lake Erie, and the farming community took a lot of heat over that we were causing those blooms with nutrient loads leaving the land and ending up in Lake Erie, and that's where it concerns you. Farmers in general are doing their part to keep those nutrient loads out of the waterways. We don't want to spend more on nutrients than necessary, and we're doing what we can to keep them in the fields to grow the best crops we can. So that's, as somebody that's in a city, that's why you should be concerned, because your water is being pulled from either those lakes or reservoirs that we're helping fill those up with our drain.
So what I'm hearing you say right now is that everybody has an impact on water quality. You can
Yes.
You can have just as big of an impact in an urban environment potentially, because the water runs off of impermeable surfaces directly into water systems. Whereas in agriculture, we're really fortunate because we have a natural filter system that helps to clean our water before it goes into before it goes back into the water systems. So as we're kind of ending up here today, we want to make sure that we answer a couple of questions with farmers Ben and Stephanie that are here for us today. So here's a quick question. What are some connections for students directly involved in science classrooms, like AP Environmental Science or agricultural science, or even chemistry within their classrooms, that you think they could think about that might lead them into a job in agriculture? In other words, if you didn't grow up on a farm, is there a job in agriculture for you today?
Oh, 100%. There's a lot of opportunities, like you said, in chemistry, whether lab type positions, technology positions to help with GPS, even communication positions on our farm. As referencing back to our soil sampling being done earlier, all those soil samples get taken out of the field and delivered to a lab, and those are, even though there's machines that are reading the soil and determining the nutrient levels within that soil, we need people to be able to do those sampling, but also to read the results and put them in the computers and create the programs to help us in turn determine what we're going to do on our farm.
Thank you. One of the things that I realized that we didn't talk about yet, Steph, that I know Ben mentioned earlier, was just to kind of show some areas that where you can see the crops that are taller over the tile outlets a little bit. So if you could speak to that just a little bit, why would it be possible for the crops to grow higher where, directly over those tile zones? So we're showing that on the screen right now.
Yeah, I know what we're talking about. So what you're seeing is the height difference on the soybeans directly on top of the tile lines in the soil. And so remember what we need to do is also keep a great mix of nutrients, air, and water to that plant. So one of the things that you're ultimately seeing above the tile line there is where we've taken away the water and have allowed some of that air to get to the root. So the root's not completely surrounded by water. And then the nutrient level has been able to get up into that plant. So that plant's been able to grow all season long, essentially kind of unrestricted, and has been able to grow to the highest of its potential. And we're seeing that in the height, probably see that in the yield also.
Yeah, it's really interesting because as we look at this image, we can even see that where those kind of natural bumps are, they're the higher crop that we're looking at, that they even still have like leaves retained on that crop, whereas some of the area between the tiles, they've lost their leaves and they're already kind of moving towards harvest. So that's really interesting. And I like what I'm hearing. It sounds like there's a lot of science and a lot of technology that is being employed within agriculture right now. So, whether a student might have an interest in chemistry, or more physical science like soil science, they could also see their role in the future in technology. So thinking forward, what are some of the changes that you might see within agriculture that can help you guys improve your practices? I know that you and Ben are really knowledgeable about all the changes that are happening within agriculture. So as we're ending up here today, I guess I just wanted to ask you that question. What do you think, we can continue to improve upon in agriculture to make sure that we're being careful and improving water quality in the future?
There's so many facets. Just futuristically, I think the future is limitless of what is going to end up coming. We've talked about the technology, but also the actual getting the work done, the boots on the ground, I guess I would call. But together with the technology, what that's going to end up being in the next 5 to even 10 years is going to be limitless to helping in the communication on the farm too.
It sounds like the more we learn about soils and the movement of water and the nutrient uptake of plants, just how plants grow, the better we're going to be in helping to improve our yields as well. So we just want to say thank you to you, Steph and Ben, for allowing us to come on your farm and to see how you guys are improving agriculture for everyone, but also helping to share your story with us. So thank you so much for being a part of our virtual field trip today. I hope everybody enjoyed what we saw today as we focused on some of those best management practices that farmers are currently employing to improve water quality here in Ohio. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.